this is Ilina and welcome to another LDRS Creative card video. In this video, we're going to make a card using the Christmas Friends Winnie stamp. This is a smaller size stamp, and also we're going to use Snowflakes and Blizzard Sentiment stamp set. So we're just going to use a Season's Greetings from there. So I've already stamped my image using the Hybrid Raven ink. I stamped it several times because I'm using cold pressed watercolor paper, and I let it dry for a couple hours to make sure that's nice and dry and it doesn't bleed when I watercolor. I will be using the Karin markers for my watercoloring, and you will see how easy it is to watercolor with those. All of them are very water reactive except the gray one. You will see in just a little bit when it has on the side, when I touch it with water, it doesn't really spread. So to avoid harsh lines, I'll just scribble onto my glass mat and pick it up from the with my paintbrush from there. So I'm just tasting some colors here to see what I want to use for the red and also the browns to color the little cat and the little dog, and also for the hair for the girls. So here you will notice on the head on the right side, actually the left side, there's no line between the stripes there. So using my markers, I will kind of create that invisible line so it looks nice and continuous. I'm using two colors of red, darker and lighter. I'm just adding the darker first, then the lighter, and blending in with my water brush. You can also use a water brush with the water reservoir on it. It works perfectly fine too. I just decided to do traditional watercolor brushes. Here I just scribbled some of the markers on the side. I'm picking up the color and drawing lines on the scarf on the bear. I will do the same thing for the scarf on the little penguin or little bird. I colored it as a penguin. That's next to the bear. So next time, since I already had that color there, I'm just picking it from my glass mat and adding onto the girl's hat. Now I'm coloring the dress. I'm using the same two red colors, applying directly and then just spreading with my paintbrush. If I want to have more intense color, I'm going back with the marker and just dropping little dots of color. And since the air is still wet, it spreads very nicely and it blends easily. Just coloring the gifts here. So here you'll see that gray didn't really spread. So I'm just adding it. This is the lightest warm gray. I just scribbled some of the pen onto the glass mat and I'm picking it up and coloring the bear. And then once it's wet, if you drop that color directly from the marker, it spreads nicely. So here you'll see that the black, in contrary to the gray, spreads very easily. And it's very water reactive. So I'm just adding directly from the pen to the paper to color the little penguin. And then just blending in it with my water brush. For the little cat and dog, I'm using orange and brown. So now I'm adding a little bit pink on the ears and the paws of the bear. Just little dots of pink and spreading it with the water brush. If it happens to be a little bit darker than you would want, while it's still wet, just pick up your paper towel and dab out some of that water. So just created a mixture of the peach colors. I just scribbled both on my media, on the glass media. Just mix the colors and color the face. Since I wanted the wings to be a little bit lighter, I just did again, I scribbled onto the glass mat, and I picked it out from there to kind of darken that color to have more kind of subtle look. I added a little bit of the gray. I colored the ground using a little bit darker gray. Again, since the gray is not very water reactive, I scribbled onto the glass and colored that ground. Now for the sky, I'm not using the Karin markers. I'm using just liquid watercolor. I'm just coloring. You can use the Karin markers to get this color. You can mix some of the blue that we use for the wings, mixed with some of the warm gray. So I set that aside to dry. Now I'm stamping the sentiment from Snowflakes and Blizzard stamp set. I'm using the Watermark ink to stamp that. I'm stamping a couple times to make sure that we have nice coverage. And once it's stamped, I will use white embossing powder. And using my heat tool, I will melt that embossing powder. I'm just making sure that the heat tool is nice and hot before I melt the embossing powder. I'm using a piece of red cardstock, 5.5 by 8.5, and I scored it at 4.25 to create a note card. Next, I'll just trim the sentiment to have a nice little strip. And also I'll trim my panel down to 4 by 5.25. I started with an A2 size panel of watercolor paper that's 4.25 by 5.5. So there I had a little red spot, probably from my finger. I just added a little bit of water with my paintbrush and then used my paper towel to dab it out, and it came off completely. Using foam tape, I adhered the sentiment. Now in the back I'm adding more foam tape. I wanted to have more dimension. Since I'm using watercolor paper, I wanted to usually cover the entire back using the foam tape so it stays nice and flat. I'm going to remove the back and adhere that on top. So this finishes our card. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to visit the LDRS Creative website for more inspiration and more ideas. And thanks you so much for joining us today. Bye!